I'm Pete, the founder of Data Council and the Data Community Fund. And I'm really excited to have a super inspirational guest today. Gabriela de Queiroz from IBM has been heavily involved in the data science community for quite some time. And she has a really amazing story that she's going to tell us today about her journey to the US from Brazil and what's inspired her to start some amazing communities. Currently, Gabriela is a senior data engineering and science manager at IBM, and she leads the team working on IBM's contributions to a bunch of popular open source projects that you know. Those are projects like PyTorch, Spark, Pandas, Arrow, TensorFlow, and others. And also, Gabriela is the founder of Our Ladies, which is an international global community. It's a nonprofit with over 75,000 members across 193 chapters in 53 countries. It's amazing how Our Ladies has grown over the years. And most recently, Gabriela's new nonprofit project is AI Inclusive, which is bringing diversity to the AI community, which she'll also share with us about in a bit. So Gabriela, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Pete. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm excited for this conversation, and I hope you all enjoy.
Yeah, awesome. It's really great to have you here. And you surprised me in our pre-talk just before we jumped on and went live that you had some beautiful slides prepared that share different parts of your story. So my first questions to you were going to be about your background, your early career in Brazil, how you ended up coming to the US. So I'm going to let you take it away and share a few thoughts with the visuals that you have.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much. So first of all, a lot of things that I'm going to talk today, it's available on the bit.ly URL, so bit.ly/dcters/IBM. The slides are going to be available. The links for the projects, for the open source projects are going to be available. There's a lot of cool stuff over there. And if you want to follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, there's a bunch of links on the Linktree/GGQ. And yeah, so I'm from Brazil originally. And besides being the founder of Our Ladies and AI Inclusive, which I'm going to touch on a little bit more later, Pete and we are going to talk about this. I'm also a member of the R Foundation, and the R Foundation is the foundation that is behind the R project, the language, the R language, the programming language that it's for data scientists, data analysts, anyone working with data. And I also have a bachelor in statistics and then 2 masters, one in epidemiology and one in statistics. So if you don't know where Brazil is based, it's in South America. There is more than 200 million people in the country, and the official language is Portuguese. It's not Spanish, it's Portuguese. And I come from a city called Rio de Janeiro, which has around 6 million people in that city. During my back in the days, several years ago, I did both my undergraduate and the first grad school back in Brazil. One interesting thing to mention here is that both of them, they were free. They were public and free, so I didn't have to pay tuition to get my degrees. So back during my bachelor, that's when I started working with data, and that was my first exposure to R. That was back in early 2007, I guess. And I really like this picture, and I still have the CD from the R version that I used to run on my computer, because back in the days, the internet was not as fast as we have nowadays. We couldn't download, especially back in Brazil, we couldn't download things from the internet. So the only way to install software was to record in a CD and then install in your computer. So this version was from October 2005, and now R is in the version 4 something. And when I was working as an intern in this lab, it was an epidemiology lab where we were using statistical models to analyze data from air pollution data and data from hospitals. So one of the studies that we worked on was this multi-city study on air pollution and mortality in Latin America. So it was funded by an institute based in the US, but we worked with 3 or 4 countries in Latin America. Another cool project that I worked on when I was working there was an interface called EpiR. And the idea was, R, it was not very friendly back in the days. It was very hard to learn how to program, how to use R. And there was 2 barriers. So we as epidemiologists, for example, we had to learn English as a language, and then learn the programming language R. So we had to learn 2 things. So we thought, why don't we create an interface that is going to sit on top of R, and it's going to be in Portuguese, our native language. So then we are decreasing the entry barrier for people to analyze data. So, and the other thing is, this interface was all point and click. So if you didn't want to, you didn't need to program. It just like point and click, depending on the type of things that you want to do. So those were 2 big projects that I worked on back in Brazil. And then, Pete, let's go back, because then is when I moved to the US. That was in 2012. Yeah, it's been 8 years since I moved
That's
from
great.
Brazil to San Francisco.
2012. So I'm curious, did the GUI that you created, did that support other languages other than Portuguese, or was it only Portuguese?
It was only Portuguese, and that was a project funded by the Brazilian Health Organization. And unfortunately, after several years, we didn't have more funding, so we had to stop the project. So the project was live for about 3 or 4 years, and then we had to move on because we didn't have money.
Got it. And was the project open sourced? I missed that part.
Yes, it was open source.
Mm-hmm.
And also the idea was, the softwares were so expensive. The softwares being used by even the health organization, they had to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to have software. So once we introduced that one that was based in R, it was free. Everything was free.
So that showed you the power of open source pretty early in your career.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's exciting. So then you moved to San Francisco in 2012, and I'm curious, what was the community like in San Francisco in 2012 for R?
Yeah, so it was funny. So when I moved to San Francisco, I do the parallel or the analogy that it was kind of like going to the Disneyland. Where we had so many resources, so many things going on, like very vibrant city, especially if you like technology. So I was in the place, like in the tech world.
Mm-hmm.
So when I moved here, I found out something called meetup.com, the website, and then I learned that you could join several groups, and all the events were free. So a lot of those technologies I had no idea, but I was reading all the job description. I'm like, oh, for a data scientist, you need to know Hadoop, you need to know data visualization, you need to know SQL, you need to know, I don't know, Spark. Spark was later, but like so many things that you needed to know, and I had no idea. So I was joining all these meetups. Every night I would go to a meetup, and then I for me, it was the best of the worlds, because as a student from Latin America, our budget was very restricted. So going to meetups was, combining learning for free and having the dinner for free. So I would go every night to the meetups and then learn and then eat, right? Yeah, so that was I was just amazed, like the community, like how many things we were able to learn, how many resources were available.
Yep. Well, I've heard it said before that the best place to learn R is from a CD-ROM, but the next best place to learn R is in San Francisco. You must have met such interesting people, and that must have benefited your career, and not just your learning about technology, but being connected to that community. I can tell it was a big breath of fresh air for you. How else did it benefit you and inspire you?
Yeah, it totally. So, after going to these meetups, I got to a place where I'm like, okay, cool. I learned a lot for free. And this is kind of like a cycle, right? You receive and then you give back, and then you receive and then you give back. If you don't give back, you only receive. This cycle will end. So I was thinking about this, and I'm like, okay, I think I'm good, and I think I'm ready to give back, because I was not very comfortable. Like, I was new, I didn't have anyone here, I didn't know anyone, but I had this desire of like giving back. And then I thought, what do I know that I can share with others, right? And then I was using R, as I showed you. I was very passionate about R, and I'm like, why don't I create a group that it's focusing R? But I didn't want to create a general R group, because one thing that I realized when I was going to the meetups was that the audience and even the speakers were not diverse. And then I would not feel comfortable in that environment. Usually I would go, I would watch the talks, the workshops in the corner, not interacting much with the people there. So then I'm like, why don't I create a group where I can feel comfortable? I can see people like me, for example, and other folks like me and with diverse background, like a place where I could feel welcome, with no judgment, and safe. And that's how Our Ladies, the organization, came together, was to create a space for us to learn together, to share knowledge, and to grow together.
Mm-hmm. And so you started Our Ladies in San Francisco first. What year was that?
It was October 2012.
Okay. Well, you didn't lose any time. And what were the first groups like? I'm curious.
So the first event there is an interesting story. The first event was in October, and I was very excited for this first event. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be so fun. And then when I got there, getting everything ready and about to start, only 8 people showed up. So I was a little disappointed, because I was so excited. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be awesome, because I'm so excited. The venue is amazing. The content that I prepared, it's amazing. But then only 8 people showed up. And then in the end of the talk, someone came to me and said, Gabriela, do you know why only 8 people showed up? And I'm like, why? Oh, it's Halloween night. Everybody's in the streets partying, and San Francisco, like there's a big party on Halloween night here in San Francisco. That's why. So actually, you are lucky to have 8 people. So that was the first ever event that we put together.
Wow, that is funny. Well, I'm glad that you had a turnout at all. And of course, I know as a community organizer, how challenging it is sometimes. You feel a little bit on pins and needles if you're going to have a big group or not. And but I guess we learn how to push through all the barriers, and it's our love and our concern and care for the community really that drives us forward. So so then after that, Our Ladies was off to the races. How long did it take for you to start to see the group expand around the world, and what was the organization structure of the group? How did that happen?
Yeah, so the group, like when I created, I didn't think about like becoming global. I didn't have this vision, or I wanted to create a local community. And then in 2016, other folks got together with me from other chapters, and then we created a global organization. And also we got a funding from the R Consortium, which is a project by the Linux Foundation. So we got some money, and that gave us the what we needed in terms of like expansion. And then that's when the Our Ladies organization started to grow. And then now it's we are in more than 50 countries and 190 cities all over the world.
Wow, that's great. And so all the individual chapters are independently organized?
Well, not independently in a way that we have a onboarding system. So once someone wants to create a chapter, they send us an email, and then we guide them through all the onboarding steps that they need. So then they become part of the official Our Ladies organization. So there is a process that we go through, and there is a lot of thinking behind on this onboarding process.
Got it. And what do you think some of the challenges are for some of the local organizers? Because you have the model is that you have a local organizer who's a volunteer for each chapter in each city. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and believe it or not, the most challenging piece is to find a place to host the meetups. Even in San Francisco, it's so hard to find places to host us. And also like the other piece is donation. Like we are all volunteers running the organization. We don't get paid, and we don't have enough money. So donation is something that we lack of.
Got it. Well, that must be really exciting to work with technical people from all over the world. Like, what have you learned about the way geeks think, the way data geeks think differently around the world? Like, what's been most surprising or interesting to you in working with such a broad community?
Yeah, I think the different cultures, and since we are focused on gender minorities, some countries it's not as well accepted that we can have groups focus on gender minorities. For example, one interesting picture that I saw a few years ago was this meetup. I don't remember the country anymore, maybe Indonesia, where you had all the women with computers or watching the lecture, and the partners in the back taking care of the children. So the woman could go and watch the lecture. And that was just amazing to see, the support of their partners so they could learn and enter into this field.
Wow, that's really neat. Yeah, that's cool. Well, that's such a great story, Gabriela. And I think what happened is Our Ladies has just grown so much that you decided to maybe step away and are you still in an operational role, or have you moved on to other things now?
Yeah, so no, I stepped away so I could focus on other things that were running on the back of my mind. And Our Ladies had a good team behind, and I felt that I needed to do something else. And that's what happened last year. Last year, I was working with AI and then reading a lot about AI. And then we saw in the news a lot of like facial recognition issues, algorithm bias, discrimination, racism, and then a lot of things around the ethics. And then seeing all the news running around, especially in the US, and all the discussion happening here in the US, in some places like China, I was like, in the people that are going to be affected the most by those algorithms are going to be the minority groups, and especially places or countries like Latin America, Africa, and other underserved communities where they are not aware of those things. They have no idea, and they are going to be the ones, being the most affected ones. And that's when I decided to do something. And I'm like, what can I do? What is something that I can do to change that? And then with my experience with Our Ladies, I'm like, why why can I create a similar organization, similar structure, but it's going to be focused more on AI instead of like being focused in a language, for example. So that's when I started AI Inclusive. That was last year. And I can show you a little bit about some of the information if the audience is interested
That
in
would be
knowing.
great.
Yeah,
That would be great.
in knowing a little bit more. So our mission as a organization is to increase the representation and participation of minority groups in AI. So we are creating this community to make AI more inclusive to everybody. So we are also based in chapters, and now we have 3 chapters. So 1 chapter here in San Francisco and 2 chapters in Brazil, 1 in Rio de Janeiro and 1 in Salvador. And we have a mix of things that we do. So we have talks where we bring awareness of the issues of all the algorithm bias and discrimination. So we make those things aware, so people is aware because they have no idea. And then the second piece is around education, empower. How can we educate them? How can we provide resources so they can enter into the AI field? So we have tutorials, we have workshops, we have tickets, free tickets for conferences. We have a lot of like, again, resources, materials. And then now our next step is to partner with boot camps, like data science boot camps or courses, so we can provide scholarships to our organization.
I see, that's great. And so are the boot camps themselves, do they sponsor the scholarship in this case?
Yeah, they do sponsor like we are not creating pretty much anything from scratch. So we are partnering with schools and they are providing some scholarship, a percentage of scholarships to our group.
Got it. I know the bootcamp world has exploded in the US and even Europe. Are the boot camps popular as well in South America these days?
They are. And the barrier which we are very cautious about or mindful about is we don't want to just to partner with English spoken data boot camps, right? We want to partner with boot camps that are native language. So we are also like in South America. So we are partnering with boot camps that they teach in Spanish, they teach in Portuguese or in French, right? So then we can make this more accessible because not everybody knows English. And if they don't know, it's going to be hard for them to learn data science. And even if they know a little bit of English, it's going to be a lot of work because they have to copy the content, go to translator like Google Translator, and then translate the content. So they have to do twice as much work, right?
Yeah, I get it. Well, you've been so prolific in starting 2 communities now. I'm wondering, how do you articulate sort of the importance behind the values around the community? I know that in order to really build successful nonprofits or even sometimes for-profits, depending on the nature of the community, it's important to be really clear about the values. And I'm wondering what you've learned about that and what advice you would have for other people who want to start communities of their own.
Yeah, so in our case, you don't have to pay for anything, right? Because once you have, even if it's a small amount, but if you charge something, you are going to exclude part of the population that they cannot afford. So all the events, Our Ladies AI Inclusive, they are all free of charge. We do not charge any event. We are not making any profit at all. As I said, we are all volunteers behind the organization. One thing that I'm also like, I know that it's a lot of work, and I hope that in the future we can have like donation support, so then we can pay some of the folks working in the organization. But we are not going to be charging anyone in the community. So that's like my call for companies and people in general to try to support those groups, because the amount of work that we do and the importance of those groups is, it's huge. So it's my ask is, please, if you have something, try to donate to any group that is supporting communities.
And as you mentioned, space is even at a premium in many cities, many big cities. And so I know from being a community organizer that, like you mentioned, just finding a space to hold an event is often one of the biggest hurdles. Have you ever done a conference with Our Ladies?
In like
Or like a multi-day conference, or have they all been sort of individual meetup formats?
mostly individual, yeah.
Got it.
But one day, possibly one day, we're going to have all the chapters. We had this plan in the works, where we would get all the chapters together, and before COVID, before the pandemic, we would get all the chapters together. But again, you need to have funding, so it's very hard to organize things like this.
Yeah, understood. Well, I know that from personal experience. Gabriela, let's talk a little bit, shift gears and talk a little bit about your work at IBM, because I know that these community values that you have personally, I think it's likely shaped your career, you would probably say. And IBM is not always a company that we think of celebrating open source, but I know that that's changing internally. And IBM has been such a great supporter of us at Data Council over the years. And we're happy to sort of expose some of the cool open source projects that I know that you're contributing to, and you have teams of engineers who are making contributions to. So I want to hear a little bit about some of the cool projects that you're working on at IBM, and hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's very good point, and I'm so glad to be working for IBM. It was the first company that valued the work that I was doing in open source and with the community. And I have a lot of flexibility and freedom inside the company to work on different projects, even though my organization is more focused on data and AI technologies. And it's not recent that IBM has been contributing a lot to open source. It's been over 25 years, like from Linux, Java, and if you go to IBM website, there is a open source piece, and then you can read the story of open source contributions by IBMers. So we've been doing a lot of contribution throughout the year. One thing that I think we missed as a company is to talk about it. So we don't talk much about it. I think nowadays we are talking more about the work that we do. And the organization that I work for, which I do have some slides about it, so we can all follow together. The organization that I
CODAIT.
CODAIT, yeah, the organization that I work for is called CODAIT. We have about 30 plus open source developers, and we are building tools to make AI accessible and available to everybody. So let me go to the next slide. So we have like several open source projects that we create. So we create inside IBM, and then we make available as an open source to the community. And there are some other open source projects that were not created by us, but we do contribute to. So let me show like a data science pipeline. So as a data scientist, as a developer, there are several steps that we go through. So we get the data, we analyze the data, we do some kind of like modeling, we deploy the model, and then there is some kind of like maintenance. So projects that we contribute to are Apache Spark, Apache Arrow, TensorFlow, PyTorch, Onyx. Then we have Kubeflow, we have Pandas, we have Scikit-learn that we contribute. Jupyter, we have several committers in the organization that are committer in the Jupyter project. We have committers on Apache Spark, Apache Arrow, committers on PyTorch, and so on. So we do contribute a lot. And we also create a lot of projects such as data asset exchange that I'm going to touch on a little bit, Egeria. There is now a very cool project that was just launched, I think it was beginning of this year. Then we have the model asset exchange, and then the whole umbrella on the trustworthy AI projects that came from the research, IBM research, but we collaborated with them, right? So we contribute, and we also advocate for the open source technologies. And can I go in and talk a little bit about the projects?
Yeah, please tell us.
Yeah, so my team, we are around 10 open source developers working in open source projects. And we have two main projects that we work on. One is the model asset exchange, and the other one is the data asset exchange. One is more focused on deep learning models. The other one is more focused on data notebooks. And the model asset exchange is a place for developers, data scientists, to find and use free and open source deep learning models. So there is a variety of domains. So if you are looking for models to analyze image, there are several models on that. And then you have for text, you have for video, and so on. There are a lot of different frameworks being used. So we have models running on TensorFlow, PyTorch, Onyx. And in this slide, I have some examples, but what I want to show here is when you go to the model asset exchange page, we have more than 30 open source deep learning models, and they can be deployable or trainable. All the coding is available on our GitHub repo. You can use the API through Python or even through R. You can also try using the Swagger. You can also use a web app that we created on top of the model, which is pretty cool. And we also are very careful when creating a project, because we think not only about the project as the coding piece, but there is a thinking, or we care about the education as well. Can we provide tutorials for the users on how to use these projects? Can we create interesting examples so they can also take a look and try to expand for the use cases? So one of the examples that I want to show real quick is on some models, we try to create web apps or examples on how to consume these models. And there is one where, there is a web app that recognizes yoga poses. So if you're doing some yoga poses, it kind of recognizes. There is one of my favorite ones, which you use your arms to make music. And this one was created using a human pose estimator model and TensorFlow. And it kind of mimics a theremin. Theremin is an instrument that was created in the 1920s, and where you use your arms to make these very interesting sounds. And let me show you a real quick example here that I did in another conference, where I was recording myself using this web app and then trying to do some music, even though it was not very successful because I was just playing around.
That's cool. That's a one-person symphony.
Yeah. And then the other project is the data asset exchange, where we have data that comes from IBM research or third parties 30 parties, and they are published, both projects, they are published under friendly license, which means that you can use in the enterprise. And we have the care on like having everything in a standardized way. And this project also comes with a lot of notebooks, so a lot of materials in these projects as well. Just to close, Pete, this, because I know that we are running, we have a little bit more time, but
yeah, you're good.
Other than the more like traditional open source data science, open source projects, as I mentioned before, we are very engaged in the trusted AI life cycle using open source. So we have 4 open source projects. That one is around robustness, the other one is around fairness, the third one is around explainability, and the fourth one is around lineage. And they are all open source. All of them are available in Python, but the AIF 360 is available in R as well. And they have demos that you can play with, and then notebooks, and you can use again in your enterprise application. There is IBM products that runs with these packages as well. And this year, 3 of the first 3 projects, they were donated to the Linux Foundation. So now these 3 projects are under the Linux Foundation.
Right.
Yeah. There are other projects that I work on, that we as a team work on, but these are the main ones.
That's very cool. Well, AI accountability, responsibility, fairness, these are such important topics right now. So it's great to see the efforts at IBM, not just to contribute and create these projects, but also to open source them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we are doing more and more work in this area. It's a very interesting area. It's an area that is increasing, and we have a lot of work on this.
Yeah, excellent. Do you have any more slides that you want to share with us, Gabriela, or is that the last one?
Yeah, I do have some kind of like call to action, which is like, other than following the AI inclusive on Twitter, Instagram, is that all the material that I was sharing here, the slides, the links, everything that I was talking about is available on our GitHub repo. All the presentations that we are doing, we are trying to put in this place. And if you feel like you want to be up to date or follow what we are doing in this repo, you can always start our repo. And that's it. That's all I have in terms of slides. But if we have questions or anything else that you want to touch on, I would be happy to talk about.
That's great. That's great, Gabriela. Well, thank you for sharing your experience with us. I think it's really inspirational, how you were able to end up in San Francisco and to appreciate and embrace the community, and then also to really give back and start to build communities of your own. So yeah, thank you for sharing all of your time with Our Ladies and with AI Inclusive and with us, and it's been really great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I hope to see you around. And again, remember to support the communities, the organization, the projects that are open source. It's so important to have this type of communities around.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. And we've published a bunch of links in the chat alongside this conversation, so people will be able to jump in, become a member, potentially donate space for meetups when we start to meet in person again, which I'm hopeful will not be too long. We'll see. But I know that that's such an important part of running a IRL community, and so I'm hoping that folks will raise their hand and be willing to support in multiple ways. So just a couple notes before we end the show. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel for Data Council, and that's a good way to get notifications of our upcoming DC Thursdays events. We have a bunch of awesome events planned through December and then into January. So we look forward to seeing you at some of our next events. And also, don't forget to leave us feedback via the response form that's posted next to the video. It helps us know what's resonating, what we can improve, and how to better serve the community. So both Gabriela and I would appreciate your feedback in that regard. And finally, DC Thursday is becoming a bit of a thing. We've done a bunch of episodes over the last 6 months, and you can on demand play any of them in our playlist on YouTube. So make sure you check out some of the previous guests as well, and feel free to share the episodes with your friends. So that's it for now. Thanks again to Gabriela, and we'll see you all next time.